Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Rozell. I serve as the Dean of the Schar School of Policy and Government here at George Mason University, and we're very proud to host the Hayden Center. And this is the first of a number of events that we will be doing this year, so I hope you will be engaged, come and participate, attend these events, which we think are just absolutely wonderful. So before I turn the microphone over to the director of the Hayden Center, Larry Pfeiffer, I would ask everyone to please stand for the presentation of the colors. Thank you.
All right, everyone can be seated, and thanks to the Army ROTC Color Guard for coming and giving our event tonight a little extra patriotism and dignity. Thank you very much. I'm Larry Pfeiffer, Director of the Hayden Center. Thank you again for coming out tonight. I appreciate the patience of many of you who had planned to be here a couple weeks ago, and we had a last-minute postponement. First postponement in 6 years, so thank you again for your patience and for coming out tonight as well. The Hayden Center, as Mark mentioned, has been here at the Hayden Center for 6 years. It's founded by General Michael V Hayden, former CIA Director, Director of NSA, Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence. Here in the front row, just would like to acknowledge General Hayden here. The Hayden Center, for those who don't know us, we have been established here at the Schar School as a venue for these kinds of events, speaking events where we bring people who are either currently in government, formerly in government, maybe they're experts from academia, from think tanks, from industry, and they come here and try to sort of demystify the world of intelligence for you and explain how intelligence informs policy, maybe disappoints policy at times, maybe frustrates policy at times, how it supports the warfighter, which I think is something we'll probably talk a bit about tonight. We do that with these events. We are on social media. I used to just be able to tell you we were on Twitter and Facebook, but now I have to tell you we're just about on every social media platform out there because of how fragmented social media is getting. So if you got a favorite social media platform, search Hayden Center, find us, follow us. If we're not on it, send me an email and tell me and we'll get on it because the social media world's getting a little crazy out there. We record these events. We're going to record tonight's event. We post these events on our YouTube channel, so if you're interested in seeing what great events we've done the last 6 years, check out our YouTube channel and watch those events. If you are shy about being recorded, don't worry. We're not going to be putting the cameras on you unless you're maybe at a microphone asking a question. If you don't want to be on our video, just don't ask a question. The question and answer session will proceed about 45 minutes into the event. Michael will indicate to you when it might be time for you to start lining up at the 2 microphones that are at the end of the aisles here. Line up. We'd ask you that when you get up there to ask your question that you identify yourself if you care to. If you're from the press, we would particularly like you to identify yourself. That would be nice. We'd like you to be brief, and we'd actually like to ask a question. So if you're interested in giving us a lecture about something, maybe hold off and let somebody who has a question take your place. Tonight, we're honored to have with us 2 esteemed leaders of the intelligence community. Moderating our discussion tonight is Michael Morell. Michael has been a friend of the Hayden Center for several years now, moderating many of our events. He had been a distinguished visiting professor here at the school, teaching courses. Some of you may have taken his classes last semester. Michael's a former deputy director of CIA, 30-plus year veteran of the intel community. He served twice as acting director of CIA. He may have actually, in his twice as acting director, served longer than some directors. He's an author, written a great book on the counterterrorism war that we've been fighting off and on for the last 20 years, so check out his book. You can go to Amazon and get that. And he's also the host of a podcast called Intelligence Matters. It had been a podcast on CBS News. Many of you probably subscribed and followed it, and many of you are probably wondering, why have you not seen an Intelligence Matter podcast in a while? Michael promises me it's coming. It's coming. It's going to be here in a few weeks or so.
There'll be an announcement soon.
So we'll make sure to let people know when that podcast is out. So stay tuned for that. We're exceptionally honored tonight to have the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency here with us, Lieutenant General Scott Berrier. You know, it's not every day that an agency director has the time to come speak to anybody, no less a director of an intelligence secret spooky place like DIA. So enjoy the conversation tonight and be prepared to ask lots of good questions. He's the 22nd director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He's been the director since October 1st, 2020. Most directors' tours average about 3 years, so you know his odometer is starting to roll over again here. Maybe here a little while longer. A successor has been named, but as many of you know, a lot of general officer nominations are being clogged up in the Senate over some political issues at the moment. The general has served as the senior intel officer at just about every level of command you can find. Some of the more important or more prominent ones was as the U.S. Army G2. He also served as the Deputy Chief of Staff of Intelligence for the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, ISAF, and wore the second hat as well as the senior intel officer for U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He did a similar stint in Iraq. He served as senior intel at U.S. Central Command. He was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence for the UN Command and Combined Forces Korea Command, as well as U.S. Forces Korea. And those are just the important jobs he had, not to mention the long esteemed career he had before that. I will turn it over to Michael and the General to begin the conversation, and thank you for joining us.
General, welcome. It is great to have you here. You know, thank you for taking the time. It's great to be on stage with you. It's a real honor for me. I see some of my students out there. Hope you guys are doing well. I want to start from the students' perspective. So a lot of them are thinking about, you know, what they want to do with their career, where they want to go. And I want to start by asking you how you decided to join the military and how you decided on the intelligence track once in the military.
Michael, thank you for that, but can I just say a word of thanks before we get started here? I would like to thank the George Mason University, the Hayden Center, the Schar School, Larry, Mark, General Hayden, Mrs. Hayden, thank you for your long service. Sir, you came to DI a few months ago and you participated in an activity with us, and that went a long way and inspired a lot of DI officers, so thank you for that. And ma'am, thank you for supporting your airmen for as long as you did. Thank you. Michael, it's a pleasure to sit on stage with you. Your bio says a lot about what you did, but there's a lot that's not in that bio that we know things that you have had to do for your country. So it's an honor for me to be here. Thank you. Let me start by saying that I always wanted to be a soldier from the earliest days that I can remember. Always wanted to serve in our Army. And it was when I got to the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point and entered the Russian and East Central European Studies program and ROTC at the same time. It sort of came together with a ROTC instructor there who was a military intelligence officer. And he really dug the Russian East Central European Studies that the university had at the time. And he actually put this together for me and started to track down a military intelligence career field. That was 1983. Commission, came on active duty in 1984, height of the Cold War. Went to Fort Huachuca. My first assignment was as an infantry battalion S2 in Alaska. We were Arctic Light Infantry and Airborne. And that was exciting. That was the exciting part of the mission. The not so exciting part of the mission was securing the Alyeska pipeline, a strategic asset in Alaska at the time. My 23-year-old self didn't think much of that mission. But my 61-year-old self thinks a lot of that mission now, especially with what we have seen. But I think it was this notion of the excitement of being a young officer in the Army and a military intelligence officer at a time when the threat from Russia and the Soviet Union was real. And when I think back to those days, this is 1984, there were enough nuclear weapons on the planet to destroy everything. And so that threat was real. And it was complicated at the time, but when I compare 1984 to, say, 2024, the threat and the complexity is much greater today than it was. It was a bipolar world in 1984 with USA, NATO, our allies, and the USSR and the Warsaw Pact, and that was somewhat binary at the time, and really allowed you to focus on the threat. And while it wasn't easy, we had years of training, years of understanding, years of watching the Russians operate, and then all that ended in the early 2000s, and then it felt like I was in a different army, and that was the army of getting ready. And we did a lot of training, and across all the military services we did this. We got ready for a war that we actually never fought. And then 9/11 occurred, and then that changed the game for everything. And many of us have served at a very difficult time in those 15 or 18 years, and some still serving in that fight. And that was about an army where you would join a unit, train with a unit, deploy with them, fight with them, sustain losses, incur losses, come home, families keeping it together back at your home station, and then doing it all over again for many, many years. That was a tough army to be in, but as I came out of that military in, say, 2017 and came into the more strategic realm in the Army and here at DIA, the realization that we face this multipolar world with China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, violent extremist organizations, it is a much more complicated threat set today than it was in 1984, and it's an exciting time to be in the intelligence community, and the work we're doing across DIA with our intelligence agency partners and partners around the world to be able to gain insight and understand this threat is really interesting. So what brought me to this in 1984, the enthusiasm hasn't changed, but the threat has changed, and DI is doing everything it can to make our country ready.
Just wondering, sir, as you think about your career, if you can share, the tours, the experiences, the moments that really, shaped who you are, shaped your success, really turned out a senior intelligence officer.
Well, I appreciate that question. When I think about all of those tours, there were some definite experiences that shaped the way I view the world. The first was a tour from 1989 to about 1993 with the U.S. Army's Ranger Regiment, an elite special operations unit, and many of the officers that I served with are on active duty today from that same unit. General Mingus, our future Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, General Carrillo, the CENTCOM commander. Really hard training, really difficult circumstances going against threat sets that we train for in valuable ways, and that was a foundation of the officer that I would become. And then at every successive level, chasing what I would call the hard job, being a brigade S2, being a division G2, commanding at the battalion level, commanding at the brigade level, all the while honing my intelligence skills, but also honing my leadership skills to be an empathetic leader and to be able to understand people and the needs of our Army, the needs of our country, but also the needs of our soldiers. And I've tried to carry that with me through all the years that I've served, and I'm just humbled and honored to be here at this late date, still serving and still trying to be an engaged leader in the formation that I have.
Okay, the role of DIA in the intelligence community, can you put that into context for us?
Yeah, so one of the 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, a lot like some, but different in other ways, originally formed in 1961. The chairman at the time and Secretary McNamara wanted a different view of intelligence that was flowing up from the military services. So if you think about intelligence delivered by the Army, Navy, and the Air Force at the time, it probably might have been a little biased based on what their service secretaries wanted, and the Secretary of Defense wanted one view, one defense view. And so we got our origin there. The first tussle we got in was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that tested us. And we have been tested with every crisis since then. So we're really the Defense Intelligence Agency, and if you think about it, we are an all-source intelligence analysis and operations agency. We are responsible for foundational military intelligence. That is to say that we must be the master sense makers of the operational, strategic, and tactical environments for DoD. We also provide intelligence support to strategic competition, a relatively new concept. And so DIA, with its global footprint, we're in 140 different countries. All of the intelligence officers that are civilians that serve at our combatant commands are DIA officers. So if you're thinking about a career in DIA and you like to travel, there are opportunities abound at all of those combatant commands all over the world. We have our military diplomats, our defense attachés in all of those countries. Think about all the partnerships that we maintain through our military diplomats. We do analysis, we do collection, whether that's human collection, technical collection in all domains, a rigorous counterintelligence mission, and so much more that DIA does for the Department of Defense.
And your interactions with the rest of the community?
Those interactions are awesome for a couple of reasons. The first one is we're all friends. So one of my best friends is Vice Admiral Trey Whitworth. We grew up in the military together. Paul Nakasone and I at NSA grew up in the Army together, so we all know each other. We talk a lot. The DNI brings us together. The USDINS, the Honorable Ron Moultrie brings us together. And we have this awesome relationship and partnership. And I often try to think about how say the SVR and the GRU, how their relationships are going. It's very competitive for them, and it's not the same thing. I often wonder who the MSS is partnering with. Probably not the same thing. But in our intelligence community, that is the asymmetric advantage that we have. We all know each other. We all work very, very well together. And I think it is our decisive and strategic asymmetric advantage.
Sir, let me make an assertion and get you to comment on it. Intelligence has never been more important than it is today, but it's never been as hard as it is today. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. When I think about intelligence in 1984 and somewhat simplistic when you think about it, we knew the Soviets were conducting operations on air, land, and sea. We knew what the nuclear threat set was. But when I think about that and relate it to today, it's much, much more difficult. If you think about the domain of space, the domain of cyber, what open source has been able to bring to the intelligence disciplines, there's just a lot more data out there that we have to be able to track. There are a lot more activities that we have to track. And we need talented young people to be able to carry it to the next level.
And a second assertion, which is intelligence community has always worked, as you know, has always worked closely with the private sector.
Always.
But that's even more important today than it ever has been. And I've heard some very good things about what DIA is doing in the private sector, what DIA is doing in open source. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, we have a robust partnership program with a lot of civilian partners, to include academic institutions and the defense industrial base. And so I think we've got a really unique posture where we have an innovation element and organization that draws in great ideas on how we might use those ideas. We have a Need a PD page, so if you've got a great idea, write it up in a one-page or two-page paper. We'll get it, take a look at it, get it to the right people, and start a conversation about how we might incorporate that into everything we're doing. On the open source front, this is really, really exciting. We have an organization called the Open Source Integration Center. At DIA, open source is a separate career field. We consider it a collection career field. And so we're looking for bright people with language skills that can be able to operate in this new domain for the intelligence community. Not really new, I guess. We've always used open source, but now it's so much more complicated and so much more data out there and a very robust, rich picture for us. And if you think about it, when you add all of that open source data to the very sensitive information that we collect and analyze, that really is the secret sauce of going forward into the future.
And then putting analytic tools on top of all of that data.
Absolutely.
And where do you see AI going in terms of the future of intelligence?
Thank you for that question. So we are at the cutting edge right now of some really, really interesting algorithms, tools, machine learning that will revolutionize the way we do foundational military intelligence. So for the last 30 years, we've had this thing called MIDB. That is the Military Intelligence Integrated Database. That is the repository of everything we know about foreign militaries in the world. So if you think about all of our operations over the last 30 years, it generally started with a graphic and a description out of MIDB about what that thing was. MARS, our new analytic program, will replace MIDB. This is the Machine Assisted Analytic Rapid Repository System. There won't be a test, but it is the thing and the wave of the future for foundational intelligence analysis. So think about all of the sources that are available, say sensitive to open source, and be able to kludge those into a database that is now so much more rich than say a NGA graphic and a written description. Think about all of those sources that you would be able to access in the open source, open media, through traditional and non-traditional collection means to make MARS the most robust, rich database in the world. And it'll allow us to do things like to designate what areas should be on a no-strike list, because we can understand through the variety of sources where a church is, where a school is, where a hospital is. Never again do we want to bomb an embassy that we shouldn't be striking. So these are lessons that we have learned. We're applying that, and I would say that our partners in industry are really bringing us great ideas on how to be able to manage all that data as quickly as we can.
I see you brought something with you.
I did.
And I'm going to give you an opportunity to show it. One of your legacies, I think, is that you've tried to be more open with the public about what DIA does and some of your findings. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we've recently reorganized at DIA, and I would say DIA over the years had many stovepipes of excellence. And I see my good friend Johnny Sawyer here, a longtime DIA officer and senior. He helped me think about this when I first came in, and we really created for the first time what I would call an operations officer, or J3 of DIA. So we call this individual the Deputy Director for Global Integration. And that individual looks across the agency, across all of our capabilities in Title 10, Title 50, and puts those in the right place at the right time to make sure that we can help the department compete in strategic competition. It's really an amazing capability, but one of the things that we have done to operationalize intelligence is create things like this. And so there will be, these will be out in the outer area for you to take. This is an unclassified glossy of all of the Iranian UAVs that have been pumped into Russia and into Ukraine against the Ukrainians. So I have a very dedicated team, and I'm not going to tell you how we acquired the material to create this graphic, but we have a very dedicated team that studies that foreign material. We declassified it, and we put it in a document like this. Christiane Amanpour used this on CNN to confront the Iranian foreign minister. At a UN venue very, very soon, all this equipment will be displayed again so we can share it with the world. And just one of the things that DIA can do with its foreign material program and also its open source program to really, really expose the truth in ways that we haven't done before. So thanks for allowing me to talk about that.
That's great. What I'd love to do is kind of walk you around the world a little bit and get your comments about how you see some pretty important issues. And let's start with Russia-Ukraine. From your perspective, where are we in the war on the battlefield? Where are we in terms of how each side is thinking about the situation? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Right, so a grinding slog. We are 18 months into this now, and what I can say about the Ukrainians is they from the very beginning, have had the grit and resilience that it requires for its country to win. That military has gone through a lot and evolved over time. And in their current counteroffensive, you know, people will talk about them not making a lot of headway and taking a lot of terrain, but this is a slow fight and a very well prepared Russian defense in southern Ukraine right now. I think the Ukrainians are giving more than they're getting, and we will watch them and support them. I think one of the things that the Ukrainians have that is an asymmetric advantage is they have global support for what they're doing around the world. We have come to their aid, and we, DIA, and with our partners at EUCOM and other intelligence agencies are delivering intelligence support to that army to do what they need to do. I do think that is a big advantage for the Ukrainians right now. We will have to watch this as it plays out, whether it's solved on the battlefield or whether it's solved through diplomacy. Not quite sure how that will come out. We watch it very, very carefully every single day. We have stood up an organization called the Integrated Crisis Group Russia to be able to support that effort with hundreds of officers across the agency. It has been very rewarding for them to be able to participate in this, and we will continue that support to Ukraine for as long as it takes.
What's your sense of what the most important factors are that will shape how this ends?
I think continued support for the Ukrainian military will be vital. Continued intelligence support will be vital. And I think as long as the Ukrainians can put together the planning, the grit, and the resilience required, I think they can come out of this in a fairly reasonable way that will satisfy all of their needs and really put Russia on its heels.
And I assume, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I assume that you believe the outcome of this is important to U.S. national security.
I do believe the outcome of this is important to not only U.S. national security, but also our European partners and NATO partners as well.
And why?
Well, I think if Russia gets away with this, there will be a thought that there could be a next Ukraine, and who knows where that will be. So I think it's important for NATO to stand together. I think what our DNI, Avril Haines, did in the beginning to change 27 policies rapidly to be able to induce intelligence diplomacy to share this story with our allies and partners was instrumental in where this conflict is at right now. I could see that scenario play out in future conflicts, perhaps in the Indo-Pacific, and we want to be ready now so that we're not surprised in the future. And that's been one of the key aspects here. But I think it's really important for our country and for NATO.
Yeah. You know, one of my senses is that the public use of intelligence, right, that we saw in the early phase of this war is going to become a tool of U.S. foreign policy going forward. Is that your sense?
I hope so. I mean, for all of us that were in the intelligence community, the early days of that were a little scary because some of that information was heavily protected, and it was a bold decision by our president and our DNI to do that, and I applaud them for that, and it's paid off. And you know, we want to use that as a model going forward.
And then let's talk about the big strategic challenge out there, China, strategic competitor. How do you see the challenge posed by China to the United States?
Sure, thanks. I appreciate that. We do a lot of thinking about what we call our pacing challenge. You know, when I think about China, I don't want to oversimplify because it's a complex ecosystem in terms of a threat set. But I think of this cable, and it is a three-stranded cable with a sheath on it. And the first strand in that cable is really Xi's political strategy, which he's been able to maneuver himself into a position where he is the supreme guy. He is making all of the decisions, and he's put all of his guys in place. I find that to be very interesting to watch him maneuver. That has been interesting over the years. The second strand of that cable would be the Belt Road Initiative, really the economic engine that's driven so much investment around the world for China. Some of that altruistic, much of it is not altruistic. And it's been able to fuel an economy that was on the rise. That might be tapering off a bit right now. But that's basically been able to fund everything that he's wanted to do. And then he's got this military strategy, which is modernization. And you know, he's given his military the task to be ready to take Taiwan by force by 2027. And there are a number of dates out there. We had the date 2025, we've got 2027, we've got 2035, and we have 2049. I take all of those very, very seriously, and we don't have a crystal ball to determine when and if that might happen, but it's our job at DI to make sure that we give as much situational awareness and decision time to Department of Defense senior leaders on that problem set. And then lastly, I think this cable is covered in a sheath, and that has been a sheath of espionage and the greatest theft of intellectual property in world history. A lot of the military modernization that the Chinese have today comes as a direct lift from not only our defense enterprise, but also many of our nations that we partner with, and they've been very, very good, and we need to wake up to that.
What do you think Xi's learning from Ukraine?
Great question. So I think the first thing he's learning, and he's probably watching a little bit of Ukraine and thinking about Afghanistan and thinking about leadership and a couple of aspects of that. The kind of national leadership that would have the staying power to induce people to want to fight, and it really gets after that will to fight question. If you're looking at Afghanistan, what you saw was a leader that didn't stay in a country that fell apart. If you look at Ukraine, you have a very vocal leader that did stay and inspired his nation, and I think that's kind of an X factor for the Ukrainians. I also think that he's probably thinking about his general officer corps and all of his services, thinking, do these guys have the grit and the know-how and the resilience to be able to do this? And maybe has some doubts about that. We try to watch them very, very carefully. I think the PLA and all their forces are a learning and growing organization. They continue to exercise. I think it's important for us to watch that. But I do think that if he is watching Ukraine carefully, he will realize how hard that is. And he will realize that his partnership with Russia is probably a little strained right now.
He's never done combined forces before, right? So that
They've never done that. They want to train to that. I mean, their last war was in 1979 with Vietnam. That didn't go as well as they wanted it to, and so there are probably some doubts in their mind right now.
So, the 20 years that we were fighting a counterterrorism, counterinsurgency war, they were preparing, right?
Right.
For a different kind of war.
Right.
And so we have some catching up to do. Can you talk a little bit about how that's going from your perspective, and where we are on the ability to deter long term, which is what we need to do.
Right. I'll speak from a DI perspective first. When I think about the many officers who served so honorably in DIA through 20 years of CT operations, and having to come out of that and say, okay, we now have a new important priority, and that is China and Russia. And we have to create that expertise that for so long so many officers were focused on violent extremist organizations and network targeting. To be able to take that skill and then apply it to try to become a China SME in short order is a tall order. And so we've got to develop more SMEs, China SMEs and Russia SMEs. In 1984, when I first came in, there were a lot of Russia subject matter experts out there. All of those guys and gals sort of drifted away in the 1990s, and then we find ourselves now in a position where we need to generate subject matter experts. That's why programs like the Russian Central European Studies program that I went to was so valuable for me at the time. We need more programs like this and more programs like what you have here to be able to prepare young folks to be able to take this on.
And you mentioned the 2027, Schie's 2027 goal. Is it your sense that they're on track to get there?
My sense is that they continue to try to be ready. The decision for China to take Taiwan by force is a complicated conversation. Perhaps aspirational, perhaps not. But we know that the military capabilities that they are building are building toward that objective.
Okay. Iran, which seems to have disappeared from the news at least, how are you seeing the Iran threat today?
So if you're a DI officer at U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida, you're thinking a lot about Iran. And so the Iran team there is robust, and they're watching all phases of what I would call Iranian malfeasance throughout the Middle East and against Israel. They are still a very active threat. They have created some technologies that, quite honestly, may be a little surprising in terms of their UAV technology. The fact that they are now partnering with the Russians to provide that technology to them. They have a credible ballistic missile force. And of course, in the years from when I was the CENTCOM J2, say 2012, 2013, the Quds force has only grown its capability, and its partners in the region become a much more dangerous threat.
So that threat has not gone away?
That threat has not gone away.
Even though it's not on the front pages?
It may not be on the front page, but sooner or later it probably will be.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. North Korea. So you served in Korea.
I did.
And the North Koreans' strategic weapons program originally focused on ICBMs, the ability to deliver nuclear weapons to the homeland here. Now a move towards tactical nuclear weapons, which is really interesting, right? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And so how do you think about the North Korea threat going forward?
Right, it's a great question, Michael. And as a Korea watcher, when I think about when the Koreans first started building their ballistic missile technology in the 1990s, they were really using like 1950s technology. And we didn't give it much thought at the time. We should have probably given it more thought, because that program, under various leaders, has started up, sped up, slowed down a number of times. And actually, they've got a credible ballistic missile force right now that we have to keep an eye on. And so when I think about that versus where their economy is at, which is absolutely terrible, and it's terrible conditions for the people of North Korea, their military over time has eroded to a degree. So, we used to worry about them invading the Republic of Korea, challenging the alliance. We don't see that as the primary threat anymore. their ballistic missile force and their ability to employ nuclear weapons will be the future threat. And then I think as they have watched and learned lessons and collaborate with maybe Russian counterparts, the ability to acquire some of these smaller weapons is probably on their mind.
Yeah, and then terrorism, which isn't on the front pages either. But how are you thinking about international terrorism?
So thinking about it in terms of DI is really defense of the homeland. What are those threats that are out there currently in Africa and the Middle East that could threaten the homeland like a 9/11 kind of event? Really, that's DIA's role in this. We still support our partners in SOCOM, in CENTCOM, JSOC, and other formations, but honestly, we have divested some of that capability to be able to focus on Indo-PACOM and the China threat set and the Russia threat set. But it's still real for us, and we still have capability out there in supporting commands every day.
A lot of discussion about sort of what would happen in the aftermath of a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan in terms of being a hospitable place, right, for terrorists. Where are we on that?
So, you know, there was a lot of discussion last year about, hey, how long would it take for ISIS to regenerate, for Al-Qaeda to regenerate? Honestly, we don't see a lot of progress from Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan right now. ISIS continues to threaten the Taliban regime, and they're fighting them now. I didn't want to put a time on it, but I would say, you know, it's longer than a year before that could potentially threaten the homeland.
One of the things I noticed the other day in the paper was that the Pakistani Taliban, which is now in Afghanistan, right, is going across the border in the other direction,
right,
and conducting significant attacks in Pakistan, right?
This is a complicated problem set for the Pakistanis as well.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually a challenge. It's a challenge for the United States. I mean, ISR is a challenge. Keeping an eye on that is a real challenge, and we have to work. We have to integrate with our partners to make sure that we're doing the most that we can to be able to keep an eye on it.
So when you think about all of these threats and challenges to the United States, what are the real strengths that we as a nation bring to dealing with these problems?
So I think the greatest strength that we have is this wonderful intelligence community that I'm hoping many of you decide to be a part of. I would certainly love to see you in DIA, but supporting our intelligence agency in any one of those agencies would be wonderful. So I think the first thing is the intelligence agencies that we have, the collaboration we have, the ability to keep an eye on these threats is unmatched. There is no other intelligence organization in any other country that is as good as the U.S. Intelligence community is here in the United States. So that's the first thing. And then when I look at our military, when I look at the power of our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, and our Coast Guard, it is unmatched. The Chinese are building, the Russians have capability, but our military is still top-notch and the best in the world.
Allies?
Allies and partners are really, really key. We have stood up a partner mission integration office where we're trying to really put all partnerships under one umbrella. So think about your traditional foreign partnerships, but also academic partnerships like this, defense industrial-based partnerships, and then an ability to evaluate which partnerships are paying off, which might need a little more investment, and perhaps the partnerships that we had that were so good in the VEO fight maybe not be the best partners for a fight against potential fight against China or Russia. So we need to be able to modulate where we invest in those partnerships, and our PMI office is really helping us get after that in ways that we hadn't had before.
So your tenure as the director of DIA is coming to a close here.
We think.
We'll see if Congress makes that happen or not.
Yes.
Your wife is probably wondering about that.
She is.
And your tenure in the military is coming to a close as well. And I'm wondering, you know, as you reflect back on your time as the director of DIA and you reflect on your time as a military officer, you know, what you're thinking.
Thank you for that question. First off, if Lieutenant General Jeff Cruz, United States Air Force, is watching this, Jeff, we were supposed to change directorship yesterday. I'm so sorry about that. It will come at some point. We'll continue to talk, and I'm really sorry. You know, I've been at this for 39 plus years now, and my wife, my lovely bride, Annie, always says, you know, it's going to take you 3 years to get over retiring, but it's going to take me.
I'm still working on it 10 years later.
Yeah, and it'll take Annie like 3 minutes to get over it. So I think she has been an awesome supporter, and through all of this, we've been able to raise a tremendous family, and all credit goes to her for that. But as I think about my tenure in the military, I've been blessed by working for great people. I think about my division commander in the 10th Mountain Division was Lloyd Austin. A brigade commander in that division was Mark Milley. When I was the CENTCOM J2, the XO to the CG at the time was Randy George, who's the Chief of Staff of the Army. And so I've been touched by all these wonderful officers and wonderful soldiers and non-commissioned officers that have worked for me over the years, and the interaction that I've had with those people and those friends and colleagues has just been tremendous. And you can't replicate that anywhere else. I think you get that in the IC. I think you also get that in the military. When I reflect at my time in the Defense Intelligence Agency, it has been amazing to see the officers that talk to me on a daily basis. Just the other day, I had a young lady who just last year was an intern, and now she's working a super sensitive program, and she's turned into a SME, subject matter expert, in about a year. It goes like that when you get into the agency or any intelligence agency. Once you get integrated into the team, it really takes off very, very quickly.
And what do you want folks to know about the men and women of the Defense Intelligence Agency?
So the men and women of the Defense Intelligence Agency are amazing. They are true patriots, whether they're 21 years old or whether they're 81 years old, and we have everybody in between, multiple generations of employees in the agency. They are all dedicated patriots coming to work every day, committed to excellence in defense of our nation, which is our motto. But when I think about a career at DIA, the first thing is service. And so you may have thought about the military, you may have thought about the intelligence community. The beautiful thing about DIA is that DIA, it's the intersection of DOD and the IC together in DIA, and that's really what makes us unique. Whether you're serving in a combatant command, whether that's Tampa, Florida, Stuttgart, Germany, or Hawaii, you get that opportunity to work with the military in ways that maybe you wouldn't in other intelligence agencies. So that's one bonus. And then the opportunities. We have 11 different career fields. Whether you're an analyst, whether you're a collector, whether you're a technical officer, a counterintelligence agency, even a policeman at DIA, there are opportunities all over the world for you to serve in those. And then I think challenge. We will give you great training, but we will also expect you to be excellent every single day. And that's what we're all about at DIA. And then finally, I think over time, there is reward. I mean, we have a great talent management system. The man sitting in front of me here, Mr. Sawyer, had a lot to do with growing that talent management system. And you can come into the agency as a GS7 or GS9, and in 20 years be a senior civilian. And that career path, as diverse it is, as varied as it is really exciting. And I think offers a lot of opportunity to our young officers.
Terrific. So let's go to questions. Don't be shy. We're going to start over here, please.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for hosting tonight and for coming. Yeah, it's an honor to be able to hear your words tonight. I was trying to decide whether to go with a culture question of how culture is changing and how you're feeling about that, or maybe on the other side where technology is going. I'm a technology guy myself, so I decided to go that direction here.
Sure.
So here we go. What strategic role is the DIA playing at understanding and perhaps offsetting intelligence asymmetries from a technological perspective between the U.S. and our adversaries? I'd say maybe a particular focus on, like, say, China, for example.
Sure. So we have recently stood up an organization called the China Mission Group. And within that organization, you'll find not only analysts, collectors, counterintelligence folks, you'll also find technologists who study what China is doing in space, in cyber, in quantum computing, and the technologies that they're developing for their intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance force, and trying to really understand those and understand what they intend to do with those. And so technology plays a key role, not only in us developing a program like Mars, but also understanding what our adversaries are doing in that space every single day.
Thank you. Great talk tonight. I'm not actually a George Mason person. I recently graduated from University of Chicago. But in any case, so with the war in Ukraine having shut off physically and metaphorically most Russian trade with Europe, and the Russians seeming to kind of have shifted some of their alliance now in the future towards economic relations with China, especially, and some others. How, in your opinion, do you believe that shifts the dynamics of their relationship, and maybe more specifically, in what ways do you think we could see that manifest in either changes in Chinese policy or Russian policy in strategic areas?
That's a tremendous question, thank you. And I think it's really interesting to watch how the Russians have had to reach out to partners and non-traditional partners for support in this conflict. You know, if you think about who is supporting them right now, they're certainly getting support from Iran and North Korea. China is probably giving them more moral support than actually material support. But when we look at the Russian economy, it appears to be somewhat resilient. They have not suffered as much as we thought they would. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But this protracted conflict will require them to seek out more partnerships for material support and financial support. And so we watch it very, very carefully. That integrated crisis group, Russia, and our Europe-Eurasia Regional Center watches this really, really carefully every day with experts.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Adam Schultz. I'm a student here at George Mason. So open source intelligence has exploded in prominence with the start of the Ukraine war, especially since it seems like everyone has a phone and everyone can record there.
Sure.
But what are some of the challenges with conducting open source intelligence in perhaps less developed regions of the world? And to the best of your ability to respond, how can those challenges be overcome?
Sure. So I think one of the neat things about open source intelligence in a theater like U.S. Southern Command, where they don't have a lot of traditional intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance assets, if we can build them an open source intelligence center that allows them to sift through the variety of sources that are available throughout all of those countries, in their AOR, really gives them an advantage to have insight into what's happening in those countries. The Defense Intelligence Agency is designated as the lead for the Department of Defense for standards, training, tradecraft, and policy for open source intelligence. So we're working very, very closely with all of our combatant commands and the services to be able to sort of harness all of the 1,000 flowers blooming at a time, because everyone's got a different plan and strategy for open source. So we're trying to corral that right now so that we get some synergy and symmetry, and not everybody's being ripped off by the same data sources.
Thank you.
Good evening, Matthew Boyle. I'm from American University. Sorry. I'm sure you could be here all night talking about what the Russians got wrong in Ukraine, but if you could mention what they got right and anything we could learn from their perspective.
Hey, great question. Thank you. They did get a lot wrong, and I could spend a lot of time talking about that. There are some things that they have done well, though. When I think about how they have taken on Ukrainian energy infrastructure last winter and looking forward to the winter that's coming, I think their methodology on that was I'd have to give them a nod on that. Accuracy, maybe not so much, but I think they're probably thinking about that again. That would be one instance where I would say that they probably will be doing that again. The other thing, though, going back to where they didn't do so well. So when I think about intelligence preparation of the battle space and their intelligence agencies, they didn't do so well. In fact, I think I'd give them an F. When you think about how that war started out and what they said they wanted to do versus what they did, and the fact that their strategic objectives still have not been satisfied and probably won't be satisfied, it's pretty amazing to think through. I appreciate that question, though. Thanks.
Thank you.
Evening, sir. I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Amber Brown, and I graduated from the University of Mary Washington, and I'm a United States Navy reservist. So coming from one sailor in the intel community to a soldier in the intel community, my question for you is, have you noticed a difference working in the intel community on the military side as compared to working in the intel community on the civilian side? Because that's exactly what I'm looking for, to work in the civilian side.
Sure, that is a great question. We could probably stay here all night talking about that. All of the services do military intelligence slightly differently.
Yeah.
The Navy is interesting because they're a watch-based organization, and they do that really, really well. Whether you're on a ship or you're shore-based, They do watch and that kind of analysis really well. The Army has their military intelligence sort of deployed with their forces. Marine Corps do it a bit like the Army, and the Air Force is completely different. They all bring gifts to the intelligence community, and so it's really, when I think about it, those differences are what make us really, really strong in terms of military intelligence. At the national level, we do it slightly differently. We have slightly different and exacting standards for tradecraft. If our products are going before the Secretary of Defense and the President, we want to make sure that we have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's in ways that make us all look like we know what we're doing. And so, in some cases, at the tactical level, it's hard to get that kind of training to all the military services, but we're working on ways to bring that to them.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Evening, gentlemen. My name's Alec Porto. I'm a defense fellow working on the Hill for a member of Congress this year, recent Schar School graduate. My question is about intel sharing, so among allies and partners. So recognizing what you said earlier about how complex the world is now, how much more data there is, and how much time and effort it takes to parse that information and make it usable. And looking at the threats that we have in EUCOM and the alliance that we have in NATO, and the threats that we have across the Pacific and the lack of a NATO-type alliance that we have there, what is the DIA doing to ensure, I guess, timely intel sharing at the right level to be actionable, usable intel that our allies and partners can work with, and what can Congress do to help that?
Right. I think the greatest lesson we learned about intelligence sharing with partners is we have to have the right digital connectivity and networks in place to be able to share rapidly. And I think that was a big lesson learned from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. As we examine the Indo-Pacific right now, we need to make sure that we have that network in place when we need it. And so we've got a great partner in Admiral Tom Hendershot, who's the Indo-PACOM J2 right now, leading the effort for us to try to organize that Indo-PACOM partner team to be able to get the right networks in place to be able to share rapidly. I think the second thing, though, is to make sure that we have the policy. Not everything is Five Eyes, although the Five Eyes is the coin of the realm for an intelligence partnership and alliance. We need to make sure that we can extend that kind of partnership out to others so that we can get them the information when they need.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Alessia Daisy. I'm a student at MIPP SAIS, Johns Hopkins. And first of all, thank you for your service.
Welcome. Thank you.
My question is about Russia. Originally I come from Italy, and unfortunately we've seen how good Russia is in propaganda and in sending out a narration that is exactly the opposite of what is going on. So do you really think that Russia is still very good in manipulation and active measures in Europe?
Yeah, I think they're very active in that space for sure, and it's part of their doctrine, and we've seen that play out over the last 18 months as they've been in this operation in Ukraine.
And how risky is AI in the misinformation space, disinformation space?
Yeah, I think it really requires some intuitive analysis and tools to be able to help us wade through all of that. They bring mass and scale to the information operation warfare, and we have to be prepared to be able to combat that and work with our partners to make sure that they understand what's happening.
Thank you. This was my second question.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Schar. I'm a PhD student here at George Mason, but I also happen to work at DIA. My question for you is, the intelligence we produce serves the policymaker, but it also serves the warfighter. But how does the intelligence kind of shape our military innovation efforts within the DoD?
Yeah, really, really great question, and I appreciate you asking that. So part of DIA's mission is to understand what our competitors are doing in the technology space, acquiring that technology at DIA, understanding it, analyzing it, and then feeding that back into our acquisition system to be able to counter it. That is a massive enterprise across the intelligence community. DIA has that responsibility for the Department of Defense, and we're doing that today.
Thank you.
Please.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. It's such a great honor and pleasure for me to be here, and thank you so much for giving the opportunity to speak up.
Thank you.
I'm Afsana Ahmadi from Afghanistan and a freshman majoring in government and international politics. Indeed, I couldn't find any better opportunity to ask your idea and opinion about Afghanistan, specifically about the Taliban. That what do you think are they going to remain in power, like despite all the limitations, all the challenges they're imposing on people of Afghanistan, specifically for girls and women? And if yes, what could be their strength to remain in power, and if not, how? Thank you.
It is really good to meet you. Thank you for being here tonight. I can't imagine the journey that you have been on personally, but it's really nice to meet you, and I do appreciate the question. What we're seeing right now in Afghanistan is the Taliban, while they are not thriving, they are certainly staying in power. It doesn't look like there is any other power inside Afghanistan right now that could actually move them out. So I think they're here to stay, at least for a while. We can only hope that the Taliban's policies, as you've laid out, change over time. Unfortunately, we don't see that changing anytime soon either. So it's not a great story, but I think the great story is that you're here with us tonight. Can I give you a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please.
Hi, 안녕하세요. 저는 그린입니다. My name is Green Choi. It's a pleasure seeing you today. In class, we were talking about, in our grand strategy class, we were talking about this idea of strategy and tactic presented by Karl von Clausewitz, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, and Thucydides. So my question for you is quite concise. Okay, I guess to elaborate just quickly, Karl von Clausewitz talks about this idea of friction, and to overcome friction, we need exceptional qualities. So over your 39 plus years of tenure, what qualities do you identify as someone who possesses exceptional character?
Wow.
It's a great question.
That is a great question. I think the first thing is to be a good listener, and to understand what people are trying to communicate to you, and have empathy when people are speaking with you, and then all of this boils down into leadership, and you want to be an inspirational leader. You want people to do things that they wouldn't normally want to do because they love you, not because they fear you or hate you. And so that develops over time. And if you decide to come to DIA, we do have leadership training for all ranks to learn that skill and to hone that over time. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Please.
Hi, sir. Thank you for being here. I'm Sam. I'm on the Committee on Homeland Security at the House of Representatives.
Nice.
My former boss was Mike Rogers, big fan of you. So my question is, how do you assess the potential impact of the U.S. Army's proposed cuts to Special Operation Forces on national security, especially in the context of growing threats from China and the need for specialized capabilities like cyber, intelligence, and targeting support?
That's a great question. It's probably not one that I can answer. You'd probably have to ask the Chief of Staff of the Army that question. I'm a big fan of Special Operations Forces, and they do a lot all over the world, and that's where I'll leave that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I'm a student journalist here at the Schar School, and I'm from Ukraine, so thank you so much for the conversation that we're having here tonight. You talked a lot about the importance of building international partnerships and working on them and progressing in that type of field. So my question is, on the intelligence level, what is the key to establishing those international partnerships? So according to the experts, the U.S. is pretty good at that, just to look at all the partnerships that we have around the world. So what do our specialists do better, and what can the rest of the world learn from us? Thank you.
Well, I think we can learn a lot from you based on where you're from and what your country's going through right now. So I'd like to give you a round of applause for being here as well. Thank you. I think the first thing is I always say that a relationship that turns into a partnership equals trust. And it's the R plus P equals T equation. The first thing that we have to do is have that relationship. We have to have an agreement that says we will share. And when we do share, you will provide the right people with the right kinds of security clearances to be able to review that information, then be able to secure it safely and be able to protect all of those secrets. So that's step one. And once we have that, then the trust factor kicks in, and then we establish either digital networks to be able to pass information, or we do intelligence liaison and have meetings to talk about these things. But it starts slow and builds, and I think what we have to do better in the future is to rapidly establish these partnerships and relationships so that we can get after the problem much more quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Wang. I'm a student here at the Schar School. My question goes back to when you were talking about building your internal database and trying to kind of upskill those technologies. My question is kind of, how do you toe the line between maybe a culture that's more hierarchical, military, very excellence-centric, versus, needing to be able to fail in order to innovate and iterate, in order to, meet that evolving technological landscape?
That's a great question. I don't know who said it, but somebody said culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what we have to do is be engaged leaders to encourage our officers to be able to, if they have to fail, do it early. If you have to do it often, I'd rather that not happen, but if you have to do it often, let's accept that so we can get to the best solution we can. So I think there is a culture of innovation inside DA right now. There are digital immigrants like me, dinosaurs that are about to retire, but we're bringing in a lot of folks with STEM degrees that are going to help us here. And once we acquire the talent, we unleash it on our toughest problems. Thank you.
Good evening, Director. I'm a Mason student, and I'm from TRAC, and I work at the Global Terrorism Trends and Analysis Center. And I wanted to ask you if there's a way you think the intel community can aid local and international law enforcement in countering a lot of attempts by terrorist organizations to avoid sanctions and blockades by using the black market and rogue nations in order to fund themselves?
Well, that's a great question. Remember, from a DI perspective, we're all about foundational military intelligence, and on the terrorism side, that's all about violent extremist organizations and their networks. There is room within the intelligence community to partner with police organizations. We do that selectively in various countries with certain organizations, so there is room to do that. Not a core competency, I would say, for the Defense Intelligence Agency, but when I think about organizations like the FBI and others, Homeland Security, there's probably a lot of that going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for your service and the sacrifice that comes with it.
Thank you.
I spent a few years of my life overseas, and so I'm going to build off of the previous question and say, with regard to international partnerships, at what point is a partnership able to happen, and when does it become a competitive interest and vice versa?
Okay, well, I would use the examples of Finland and Sweden. New NATO members, and we've met with them several times in just the last few months, and we have sped up our partnership activities with partners like that. And so if there is a need and if there is a reason to do it, we will do that. At the same time, we have to evaluate perhaps partnerships that are a bit static and understand where we need to invest or divest of those partnerships. So it's really based on what's happening at the time, where we need to go, and how we can build that partnership faster, if that makes sense.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to go about 5, 6, 7 minutes, okay? Please.
Good evening, General. Eric
Hi.
Schmidt with the New York Times. I wonder if you can elaborate on the agency's assessment of why the Ukrainian counteroffensive after 4 months has really not been able to achieve much progress, what decisions both Ukraine and Russia have made to account for that. And second, if you could also give us the agency's assessment of what Vladimir Putin's goals and objectives are in Ukraine over the next year or so.
Right.
Thank you.
Great question. So I think the first one is you'd have to ask our Ukrainian counterparts on what they think adequate progress is. We knew going in, as they did, that this would be a very tough fight on reinforced defensive belts, and this is the hardest kind of warfare. They have made progress. It would be up to them to judge if that progress was adequate to meet their objectives and goals. In terms of Putin's objectives for Ukraine over the next year, I haven't seen a change in anything that he is doing. He may not have the capability that he had as he went into Ukraine 18 months ago, but I don't think his objectives have changed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Greg. I'm from SICE. My question is, how are disinformation operations changing the battlefield?
Big question. We could go all night on that. Many countries and many of our adversaries have, at scale, built capabilities to do this. And so whether it's in the Indo-Pacific or whether it's in Europe, our key competitors are in this space in a big way, at scale, all the time, every day, competing against us, competing against our political systems, competing against our grids and infrastructure, and those of our partners as well.
Thank you.
Larry.
So, General, in addition to this nice crowd we have in the room, we've had about 130 people on YouTube watching the event.
Great.
And we've gotten a few questions from them. One of them is from a DIA veteran, a guy named Bob Gorley. Some of you in the audience may know Bob pretty well.
Bob.
His question is, can you characterize the changing threat of biological warfare in this age of rapid evolution in bioscience? And perhaps you could then, in answering that question, use that as a departure point for the good work DIA does in the science and technical intelligence field.
No, I appreciate that question. When I think about chemical warfare, biological warfare in 1984 compared to where it is today, it is a very, very scary thing these days. When I think about the agents that have been developed and how they might be employed, and we've seen Russia do some of this, it's not the traditional sort of chem-bio threat that we had in the days of old, and I'll leave it there. In terms of the science and technology field, we have a science and technology director led by Dr. Alan McDougall. Many of you know him. He is a hand in the IC. It's been around for a while. He is really trying to bring the best technology we can within our capabilities and authorities to be able to assist in collection of information in just about every domain. So I'm really proud of our S&T team and the technical officers that we bring in, train, develop in the operations that we do around the world. Thank you.
General, thank you very much. My name is Bruce. Compared to some of these other incredible questions, mine is very simplistic. With regards to China, Russia, and North Korea, if any of those keep you up at night, which one would it be and why?
If any of those kept me up at night, it would be PRC. And as I look at their military modernization, as I built out this three-stranded cable, that is worrisome. But that's not really what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night is the ability to attract talent, to make sure that the next generation can be as informed as we are today, to be able to do the tough things that we are going to ask our intelligence community to do. So for all of you, if you're thinking about a career in the intelligence community, the time is right to get in now, and I would just encourage you to seek conversations with all of the agents, especially DIA. That's why I'm here, but lots of opportunity out there, and that's what truly keeps me up at night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to do 2 more questions, so if you're in line and have a question and you can't get to it, you can talk to the general at the reception afterwards.
Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm Louise Shelley. I'm a professor here and run the Terrorism, Transnational Crime, and Corruption Center. This administration has put a lot of emphasis on corruption, but I didn't hear you talk about it in regards to the vulnerability of the Russian military or the central role it plays in Chinese politics.
Right.
So if you could say a little more on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. If you look at autocratic societies, it seems like that kind of corruption is endemic throughout all levels of government in the military, and that's not the exception with, or that's not an exception with Russia and China. They both have those problems. From a DI perspective, we are all about foundational military intelligence, and while corruption is a part of that, I would say it's not the heavy focus that we're looking at on a day-to-day basis. I'm more focused on what they can bring in all domains of future warfare than what's happening in the corruption, although that is an important aspect to be able to watch on how they make decisions and why they do what they do.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. It's very nice to be here. My name is William Jacobs, GMU student. I'm actually studying criminal justice, but something that's been kind of keeping me up at night over the past few weeks. I just started a project. I'm looking into AI, artificial intelligence, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'm trying to figure out, my ultimate question is how do you say maybe, how do you keep your head on a swivel knowing that artificial intelligence is it looks like, for me, it looks like it's going to change the game over the next 10 years, just the way that information works, the way that intelligence works. When you think about, it's going to change maybe how people announce things, their voices and such, or even maybe how their face looks on TVs, for example, or even bioweaponization. It can both prevent but also create maybe bioweaponization. So ultimately, how do you go about just staying well-rooted, knowing the capabilities of artificial intelligence?
Big question. From DI's perspective, I think about what are those AI tools out there that can help us with trend analysis, to help us which way things are leaning. But the thing that AI can't do, and I talk about this a lot, is AI can't help you determine intent. What is an adversary commander thinking about? Only analysts and people with experience who have studied a problem for a long time can help you with that. So I think of AI in terms of what can it bring the agency to help determine what trend lines might be, and we have some tools that helped us in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we're applying those tools to a potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific. But it's more about handling mass quantities of data, and then having our analysts not so encumbered with that data to be able to think about what the adversary is thinking and what it might do.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
General, thank you so much. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. It's been an honor. No, thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Is the mic on?
Yes.
General Berrier, thank you very much for coming and taking the time to meet with us to discuss the wide swath of information that you did. I think you leaned forward quite a bit in some of those areas, and I think that's of great benefit to the audience here, particularly our students. We do have a reception afterwards. It's going to be outside in the plaza, so please make your way outside. Food, drinks, have a great time. The General and some of his aides will be sticking around to answer any of your questions you may have. We have DIA recruiters set up at a table out in the hallway.
Go see them. Go see them.
And they can answer questions about coming to work at DIA, or they can answer questions about internships that are available at DIA as well. So please avail yourself of that if you haven't had an opportunity to do it. Follow us on social media. We're going to try to have 2 or 3 more events here in the next month or two. So follow us. You'll find out about the next event. And thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.